It's time to talk hockey with the Utah Mammoth and NHL insider on KSLSports.com, Cole Bagley on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
All right, this portion of the show brought to you by the good folks at Trajan Wealth, TrajanWealth, Wealth.com, and also Cole Bagley coming on the program, brought to you by Hercules First Federal Credit Union, growing stronger together. Cole, what's going on, man? A couple of disappointing outcomes these last couple of games, especially the one against Carolina, the way that one historically melted down. But they get within one goal with 13 minutes plus left, and I thought maybe they're going to do this thing, but no magic left in that one. They seem to calm down a little bit throughout the rest of that game after a first period. They just seem to get scored on very quickly, don't they?
Yeah, first periods have been a problem, but I think especially in that game, and Coach, even admitted it, and several of the players, they didn't come out with any energy. They were not ready to go. They were sluggish. They looked tired, and Dallas is not a team. Not that any team in the NHL, not that you can come out like that against any team in the NHL, but especially against the Dallas Stars, one of the top 5 teams in the National Hockey League, a team that could end up winning the Stanley Cup. And, a star-studded lineup. They buried themselves, and, while they kind of came back a little bit, it was just too little too late.
Look, penalties happen. We get it in this game, but it feels like the penalties have been extra punitive for the Utah Mammoth. Are they penalized more than other teams in the league? I guess is part one of the question. And part two, how can this team do a better job of controlling that?
No, they're not penalized more than other teams in the league. I'm not exactly sure where they fall in terms of the NHL
let me get you a number here.
But, it's been a problem as of late. It's been a significant problem. They've taken a lot of penalties over the last couple weeks. They've given up a lot of goals on the PK. And, I asked Tourney about that earlier today, just pointing it out of, hey, this PK was top 3 in the league for a long time. And now in January, you guys are right around 70%. So, what's going on and how do you fix it? And how do you kind of, how do you take fewer penalties but still play physical? And so a lot of it just comes down to being aware. And he did point out that there's not really a consistency in terms of, we're just taking stick penalties, or we're just taking delay of game penalties, or it's kind of different types of penalties across the board. And, he's like, it's just kind of how an NHL season goes. There's certain points where you're taking a lot of penalties, and there's certain points where you're not taking a lot of penalties. And the same can be said about there's certain points when the PK is really good and the PK is not very good. Now, you can't say the same about the power play for Utah because it's just been atrocious all season. But, yeah, I think it's more of just they've just taken some bad penalties as of late, and they're talking about it, and they're trying to get it figured out because, when you take as many penalties as they have against the teams, the caliber of teams that they have, you're probably not going to win those hockey games.
12th in the league, by the way. 12th most penalty minutes across the league. But, yeah, it's not insane because they're
close to top third.
495 penalty minutes. But the Boston Bruins have 752 penalty minutes. Like, that's wild. I mean, that is crazy. And then you think about it and you're like, but all the teams that are really, really good are all really low on the penalties, on the penalty minutes. So, I mean, not that that's a complete, straight line to success there, but yeah, it always helps to be able to get your guys at even strength. And this team plays their best at even strength. And I know that sounds crazy, but the reality is they're actually one of the best teams, if not, they were certainly the best team in all of January in 5-on-5 hockey. But obviously you get there to that point, and you get in there, and it's tough. I don't know how much these guys, they were going from winning, and then you have these 2 losses in a row. What was the attitude of the team like after that loss against Dallas on Saturday?
I think just similar to the way that they played, just tired, a little sluggish, but they understood that they didn't play well. Everybody took accountability for it. Coach talked about pretty much, he dissected every kind of piece of the game, and they're not defeated, which they shouldn't be. But I think these last 2 losses sting because, look, the NHL is a league that you cannot let your guard down. right? I mean, Utah played spectacular hockey in January. All of a sudden they lose 2 games in a row and they fall out of a wild card spot.
Right.
If they would have beaten Carolina, if they would have just taken care of business over those last 2 minutes, they would still have, a 2-point advantage in the standings with an opportunity to go up 4. But now they're on the outside looking in, and they need to pick up 2 points tonight to even just get back into a wild card spot. So, they're just trying to stay even keeled right now. That's been a pretty big theme from just about every player you ask. It seems to come out of everybody's mouth, even keeled. Just trying not too high, not too low. And I think that's kind of right where they're at. I mean, and the positive thing is, look, they're up. They've progressed to where they were at this point last season, right? I think they're somewhere between 7 to 10 points ahead of where they were. They're right where they want to be in terms of competing for a wild card spot. Obviously, everybody always wants to be better, to be further ahead, but they can't be too upset with themselves. But tonight is definitely a get right game. The Vancouver Canucks are the worst team in the National Hockey League. They're actively tanking. You got to take care of business and get back in the win column tonight.
There's no doubt about that. And there are some great positive things happening with this team. In January was amazing, but one of those stories is Kyler Yamamoto. For somebody who was on the fringe to come out and score 2 goals in a game and back-to-back against 2 really good teams. I mean, this is Carolina and Dallas both could possibly be raising the cup at the end of the year. Where did this kid come from, and what is he doing right now that's allowed him to play at this high of a level in the month of January?
Yeah, I mean, I think people forget that he's a former first-round draft pick. He's taken 22nd overall, I think in 2017, 2018, right around that range. So he's a good player. Incredible hockey IQ, really good hands. He just puts himself in the right positions all the time, whether that's in front of the net, whether that's in the slot, whether that's battling in the dirty areas. And he plays much bigger than he is. He's one of the shorter guys, obviously, on the team, and one of the shortest guys in the NHL. But and I think that's why a lot of people have kind of looked past him. They look at his size and just go, "Oh, he can't be that effective." Well, he is, and Utah has kind of learned that over the last few weeks. He sat for I think he was out about eight games or so. Then he comes back and he goes on a tear. They put him on the 4th line, and they put him on the top line. They put him on the 2nd line. He's everywhere. And that's because he has a very complimentary game. He knows how to play with everybody else. I asked Clayton Keller about this even after the loss in Carolina, and he says that, look, he's one of the highest hockey IQs that he's ever been around, and they're really lucky to have him on the team. So, and when I asked Yamamoto the other night about what he's proving right now, he says, I'm proving that I can belong. I'm proving that I can play with these guys and I can be impactful, and he's right. And so, it's an interesting journey. He's a former first-round pick, so the skill is there, but I think, his lack of size, definitely hindered him in terms of staying in lineups. He kind of bounced around the league for a while. He was in Edmonton, and then he was in Seattle, and then he was put on a tryout with Utah. He didn't even sign a contract last year until after a tryout. So it's one of the feel-good stories. A guy that has just, I think, been overlooked for a long time, and he's proving that he can still play with the big boys.
Speaking of playing with the big boys, these guys have been playing some high-level hockey, and I don't think it takes away. These last 2 losses, obviously, JJ was pointing it out, like there's just no room for error because they were suddenly going from that first wild card team to now out of the wild card even. It's just such a brutal conference, and so they get these 2 wins possibly before the break here. And then, obviously, the fingers crossed moment of good news to possibly get Logan Cooley back after the break. Have you heard anything about his status and where he's at, and what a likelihood of him rolling out right after the Olympics is going to happen?
Yeah, Bear said that he's making progress. They're really pleased with where he's at. Of course, they haven't given a expected, date of return. But if you kind of read in between the lines, I would anticipate that we see Cooley right after the Olympic break. He's continued to take steps every single day. Last week he came out for morning skate, but he just did personal drills. He didn't participate in any team drills. And then yesterday he did a pre-workout with the guys before they did morning skate. And then today he was in a non-contact sweater, but he did participate in some drills during morning skate. So it's these small baby steps, but they all point in the right direction. I would anticipate, like I said, when you look at it, Utah has performed so well over the last 3-4 weeks that there's no reason to rush him back. I think if they would have started bleeding points and started quickly falling, there may have been an excuse to maybe rush him a little bit. Maybe, okay, he's at 90% and we've got 5 games left till the break. Let's get him back because we've really got to pick up points. Instead, they continued to kind of take the league by storm. They stole some points from some really good teams. They, won a lot of hockey games. They had points in 9 straight and won 7, almost 7 in a row. So, I don't think there's any reason to think that he'll be back. I mean, he's obviously not playing tonight. I wouldn't anticipate that all of a sudden he'll jump into the lineup on Wednesday. So I would, circle, that last week of February, beginning of March for when, I would anticipate we'll see Cooley back.
Yeah, Utah should win tonight. As you mentioned earlier, the Canucks are the worst team in the league. But what are some of the things that the Canucks could do to cause them problems and possibly spoil the night for the Mammoth?
Yeah, I mean, they're still a pretty good, team, in terms of technicalities, in terms of moving the puck. They've got some decent young players, and then they've got one of the, a strong veteran in Elias Pettersson. When he's hot, he can be really dangerous. That's a guy that, out of nowhere, he can put 2 or 3 in the back of the net. So, for Utah, it's just taking care of business. It's playing their game. I was part of conversations this last week where guys like Jersey and Sergachev and Keller are saying, look, we've kind of figured out what our identity is. We know who we are as a team. And when we play that way, we're confident that we can beat anybody in the league. And if we play our game the right way, we will beat anybody in the league. So, Vancouver's still just kind of an injured animal. They've committed to the tank. They're 2-7-1 in their last 10. I think they lost like 9 or 10 in a row in January or maybe in December after they, traded away their captain Hughes. So, it's still the National Hockey League. On any given night, anybody can beat anybody. So no win is easy. And Utah will definitely need to bring their A game tonight to make sure they get back in the win column. You
mentioned they're committed to the tank. I'm curious, why would they be committed to the tank this year? Is there a prospect out there at number one that they have their eye on, or that everybody? I'm not hearing about that, but you know all the prospects and how that goes. Why are they so committed to the tank?
Gavin McKenna. Okay,
there you go.
He's the anticipated, number 1 overall pick. He's playing college hockey right now for Penn State. Lighting it up over there out in the East. He was pretty darn good for Team Canada at the World Juniors, and I don't know that this kid's a generational talent necessarily.
Yeah, I guess my question would be, is he worth the tank?
When you're Vancouver and you have not been able to figure out any direction for a long, long time, and you've traded away all your best players, which is what they've done recently, I mean, he's a kid that it's definitely worth tanking for to try to get the number 1 overall pick. I mean, his upside is really, really high. I don't know that he's going to be a Macklin Celebrini or a Connor Bedard S player. Maybe a tier down from that. He has a lot of maturing to do, and I think he needs to add quite a bit of weight before he gets to the league. But yeah, he's definitely worth it. If you're Vancouver, he's definitely worth tanking to try to draft.
Interesting year this year. Obviously, the trade deadline in the NHL gets frozen for those 3 weeks that the Olympics are going, and so the trade deadline is going to be March 6th this year. We're still new to this and trying to figure it out because it feels like the NHL is very different from the other leagues when it comes to trades and things like that. But there are very good players out there, and do you look at that and say, okay, with the cap space, with this team playing as well as they did last month, and trying to make that push to be a wild card team this year, is that attractive enough for Bill Armstrong to say we're going to go out there and get aggressive during this trade deadline or right before this trade deadline?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think what I've learned in covering this team and just making observations about Bill Armstrong is that he could jump in at any moment. I don't know that there's really a player or a trade that he wouldn't consider. And he said publicly before, look, we look at everything. If there's a player out there, if there's a situation out there that can help improve our team, we're always looking, we're always open to discussion. But on the flip side of that, kind of the message that I've received is Utah's not looking for rentals right now. They're not a team that would jump into the Nazem Kadri sweepstakes or Panarin out of New York, because those are two players that just don't match the timeline, right? I mean, Bill has said on the record many times, we're trying to stick to a specific timeline. That's why they added JJ Peterka. That's why they added Mikhail Sergachev. They're looking for players in a fairly specific age grouping, and a lot of the guys that are available, a lot of the top players that are kind of on the trade block right now, they're all 30 plus, and some of them, even Panarin and Kadri, I think those guys are 32 plus. I'm pretty sure Panarin is 34, and so for Utah, it doesn't make sense to waste assets to burn a first round pick or a second round pick and a decent prospect to go and get a rental, because those types of players should be going to contenders. A Panarin should go to a Florida Panthers or to a Vegas Golden Knights or to an Edmonton Oilers. Same with Kadri. Maybe he goes back to Colorado. Like, teams that think that they're close and by adding one of those rentals, could get you, into the final or winning the cup. And for Utah, that's just not the goal right now. The goal is to get to the playoffs and to gain experience. But based off the way that they're playing right now, I don't know that they necessarily need to add a whole lot more. Yeah, there's certain areas, a backup, another backup goaltender wouldn't be a bad idea. Some more depth in terms of their forwards, but they're going to get Alexander Kerfoot back. They're going to get Logan Cooley back. And one just kind of final thing to add, I think a good mindset for fans to remember is this team is in a scenario where they're trying to buy time, right? They've got TJ Ginla and Cole Baudouin and Caleb Denoyer and Dmitry Simashev and Maverick Lamoureux all in either the juniors or the minors. And those guys are going to be primary pieces of the Mammoth when they start to make their cup runs. And so, like I said, Bill could make a trade tomorrow. It wouldn't shock me. He could, try to enter some of these sweepstakes. But at the end of the day, I think overall what they're trying to do right now is just to buy time for their young players.
Cole Bagley, you can see his byline, of course, and also get the notifications set up for you to be able to get the hat trick that ends up coming down after every game, and it gives you the breakdown of how this team is doing and what that game looked like, and Cole does a phenomenal job. Cole, we appreciate you always dipping in with us here on the program and educating us still on hockey as we keep every week. We're just like we try to learn something new, and we appreciate you always being patient with us. But, 6:30 is going to be the pregame, and then the 7:30 puck drop against the Vancouver Canucks across the street. Cole, we appreciate it, man.
Well, huge compliments to you guys, and I mean it. The conversations about hockey are night and day better from last season. So.
Look at that.
Oh, good. We don't suck anymore.
That much.
Appreciate that.
He didn't say we're good. He goes, last year was really bad.
Hey, we suck less. I'll take that.
We suck less. There you go. Cole, we appreciate it.
No. You're good.
I got you. We're watching a lot of hockey, man. Like, we are trying to dive in. It's a lot. So it helps that my boys are so into
breaking down number one pick prospects.
I know.
Look at us.
It's
Look
all
at
good.
us.
It's all good.
I think you guys could potentially hold your own if you ended up in Canada and someone started talking hockey with you. That's a big compliment.
That's the goal.
Let's talk about the Flames, y'all. I'd rather talk about the Mammoth. Just like, let's stick to the Mammoth. And they're like, what? All right. Cole, have a good one. We'll be reading up tonight on how this one goes.
All right. We'll see you guys.
There you go. Cole Bagley.